most importantly, my fellow South Africans. I'd like to welcome you all to this historic gathering. I have called this first National Convention in my capacity as your President, as the head of state. I do so in line with Section 83 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. This gives me a locus standi. For all of us who are here, we are all equal. But it gives me locus standi because I happen to be the state president. So Section 83 of our Constitution requires that the President, as the head of state and the head of the national executive, should promote the unity of the nation and that which will advance the Republic of South Africa and its people. This is what brings me here. And this is why I invited all of you to be here and to be part of this dialogue. So it is with that authority, if anyone were to ask you. I should thank everyone who is here today for accepting this invitation. I am truly humbled and very touched that all of you have heeded this invitation and have come through to this meeting so that we can have a dialogue. You have traveled from many parts of our country, in fact, from all parts of our country, to be here. This is a true honor to me as your president. It is a true honor to all of us, to each one of us. We should feel honored. Today marks the first sitting of the National Convention of the National Dialogue, a space where we confront our realities openly, respectfully and constructively. This is not a partisan platform. This is a national platform. Here, no voice is too small. No perspective is too inconvenient to be heard. We are gathered to listen to each other, to understand one another, and to chart a common path forward for our country. We are meeting at a time of profound challenges that confront our country and our people. Economic hardships that our people are living under, unemployment that continues to rise, inequality that besets our people, growing poverty, and a crisis of confidence in our institutions. We also meet at a time when the world is rapidly changing and our own ability to adapt and renew ourselves will define the next generation. But history teaches us that nations are not defined solely by their difficulties. Nations are defined by how they respond to the challenges that confront them. Our own struggle for freedom from the nightmare of apartheid proved that unity in diversity is not an abstract slogan. History teaches us that Unity is a powerful force for change, for transformation. Gathered in this hall today are people from all across our land, people from all walks of life, people of all races, of all classes, all languages and cultures. Gathered here at this national convention are farmers, are informal traders, civic activists, policymakers, traditional leaders, waste pickers, industrial workers, the unemployed men and women of our country, the unemployed young people, unemployed graduates, eminent religious leaders, business people, and public servants like me. There are also young people and older people like me, men and women, people from informal settlements and rural villages. There are people with disabilities amongst us. There are survivors of various forms of violence. There are artists, there are sports people and cultural activists. In this national convention is gathered the rich diversity of the people of this country. Yet, although we are different in many ways, although we represent different experiences and memories and hold different views, there is one thing that we have in common. And that one thing that we have in common is that we are South Africans. We are, each one of us, sons and daughters of the same soil, the South African soil. Whether people like it or not, we are sons and daughters of the soil, of Mzansi. This is where we come from. So we share a common past, but we also share a common destiny. We share the same inheritance of division, of inequality, of pain, and of injustice. We share the same pride at ending the crime of apartheid and establishing a constitutional democracy. We also share a common future. That future binds us together. And that is why we have chosen to gather here today. Because each one of us, regardless of our differences, is committed to working together to build this future that we all dream of. We have chosen to be here, voluntarily chosen that we will gather here as South Africans. We've chosen to be here because we believe in the power of dialogue and united action. And dialogue, by the way, is not a new phenomenon amongst us as South Africans. We have always dialogued to solve the most intractable problems that have confronted our country. We gathered together, and let me add that even as dialogues have happened in our country, there have been moments where others chose not to participate. There have been moments when others said, no, what is this all about? We are not going to be part of it. Now, I will tell you a story which I hope will not embarrass one of those who told me the other time, and is the leader of the Pan-Africanist Congress. He's here. He serves in my cabinet. And as we were preparing for the dialogue, he said to me, President, we as the Pan-Africanist Congress, we have always historically refused to participate in various dialogues. We were not there in Cliptown. They call it Cliptown, when the Freedom Charter was drafted. We were not there when there was a dialogue to end violence in our country. We were not there when the Constitution was drafted, when there was that broad dialogue. And he said, we feel that our voice, our views were not heard. And he said, this time round, Aibu, we are going to participate. We are going to be part of it. So there are those who are standing outside, who are saying we are not going to participate. And we grant them that freedom. But one day, they will be like the PAC. They will realize that they should have been part of the dialogue. Because the dialogue is about bringing people together, getting all of us to speak together, not to speak at each other, and not to talk away from each other. It should involve talking together. We believe that if we share our concerns and our fears, we can conquer them. If we understand the challenges we face, we can overcome them. If we know what hurts us, we can heal. If we know what divides us, we can unite. We gather here today in all our diversity to launch a national dialogue. We are embarking on a process that will launch 1 million conversations amongst our people. Now, this is a great honor, to be able to instigate conversations amongst our people. All of us seated here must see ourselves as being truly honored that today we get to sit here and we are launching a process that will involve conversations of millions of people, 10 million people. But in the end, I see this conversation going way beyond the 10 million people who might participate. It will encompass many more millions of people in our country. This is truly a historic moment. Across the length and the breadth of South Africa, people will and must meet to talk of what worries them, what gives them hope, and how they think their lives and our country can be better. We all agree that our country is not where it ought to be. We all agree that there are many things that are broken in our country. Getting together, talking to each other, we should be able to find solutions on how we can put many of the things that are broken in our country together. This initiative is about what all South Africans must do together to make our lives and our country better. It is also about getting leaders to be able to realize what worries South Africans and how leaders themselves can be engaged in understanding the lives of South Africans and be accountable. And to look, yes, as my sisters were saying here, to look behind and see whether there are still people who are following them. Through this process, we want our people to meet in homes and community halls. We want them to meet in churches, in synagogues, in mosques and temples. Our people must meet in schools and lecture halls, in boardrooms and on the shop floor, on the pathways of our villages and the streets of our townships and our cities. We will meet online. We will be tech-savvy, as many South Africans are already tech-savvy, I found out during COVID. Our South Africans know technology. They are way ahead. They know technology. When we started distributing the 350, I tell you, it was through technology that they were able to immediately snap it. Even though they say, hi, Ramaphosa, Otanda, O Mahlalela. They did it through technology. So we will meet online. We will call into radio stations. We will debate on television. Yes, there will be many television shows. We will share our views and make our suggestions without hesitation. And we will be direct and honest. And we will need to have difficult conversations about many issues, including why do South African women have to live in fear of the men of our country? This is Women's Month, and I'm glad that these conversations should start this month, that we as the men of South Africa must begin to internalize this question. Why do the women of South Africa fear us as men in the streets, in the classrooms, and even in our homes? We need to ask ourselves those questions. We also need to ask ourselves, why do so many people live in abject poverty and so few live lives of opulence? Why, after decades of democracy, are the prospects of a white child so much better than those of a black child? We need to ask ourselves that. We also need to ask ourselves, why do women get paid less than men for the same work? That's what we need to ask ourselves. Now, we also must go deeper and ask ourselves why, when we have a Bill of Rights in our Constitution, are the LGBTQI+ people still discriminated against? Why are they still stigmatized and harassed? Why do clinics run out of medicine? Are questions that we must ask ourselves. And why do taps run dry? These are some of the questions that we must be willing to ask and which we must be prepared to find answers for. But more than that, my fellow South Africans, these are the challenges that we must be ready to do something about. As individuals, as organizations, as communities, as parents, as elected representatives, and as public officials. The national dialogue is a call to debate and to discuss, but it is also much more than that. More importantly, the national dialogue is a call to action. It is a call to all South Africans to seize this moment for change and progress. And this we cannot do when we are sitting on the sidelines. This we cannot do when we do not want to be part of this conversation. And this we cannot do when we sit on the sidelines and just criticize. We need to be inside the tent rather than being outside of the tent. And we also need to have one tent. We do not need another tent where other conversations will take place. This is the real tent where conversation must take place. Now, it is a call to build a society in which there is a place for everyone, where the country's wealth is shared by all. A South Africa that truly belongs to all the people who live in it. We have come together in this national convention not to have the dialogue, but to start the dialogue. Gathered here, all of us together, we are well over 1,200 or 300 across many organizations and sectors. Our task is to prepare for the thousands of public dialogues that will happen in communities across the country over the next 6 to 8 months. We are here to consider some of the themes that may arise in those discussions, understanding that it is ultimately the people of this country that will determine the issues that should be discussed. And this is what we call citizen-centered dialogues and discussions. We are here to reflect on how we should approach these public dialogues, what methods we should use to ensure that everyone has a say and that the discussions take place in an environment that promotes understanding and that encourages healing. Through this convention, we seek to equip delegates to be champions and enablers of these public dialogues. We seek to ensure that we give the space to South Africans to define the outcome of the national dialogue process, so that those thousands of conversations can be drawn into a clear vision for the country and an agreed program of action into the future. There is history to this. When we drafted our constitution, and I'm glad that Rolf Meyer, who played a pivotal role together with some who are here, including myself, is here today, because we participated in the process of ensuring that as we drafted the Constitution, we involved many of our people throughout the country to discuss the key elements that should go into our Constitution. And today, the Constitution that we have is a people-driven and a people-drafted Constitution. That is what we have. Now, through the national dialogue process, we hope to arrive at a social compact that will outline the role and the responsibility of all of us as citizens, as the arms of the state, business, labor, traditional leaders, religious bodies, civic organizations, activists, and various other social structures. This national dialogue must be about citizens taking responsibility for their own future. Through the dialogues that will take place, people must be able to attend to the challenges that we are facing, where they live, where they study, where they work. They must be able to hold their public representatives accountable and ensure that all public institutions fulfill their responsibilities. The National Convention is the moment at which the people of South Africa take over the national dialogue. For more than a year, various formations of civil society have been working to conceptualize and champion the national dialogue. Central to this effort have been a number of legacy foundations established by and named for stalwarts of our liberation struggle. We express our gratitude and appreciation for the work of these foundations in giving life to the national dialogue. And let's give them a round of applause for having done all this work. Now, we also thank all those from civil society, government departments, provincial government, state-owned enterprises and businesses who have worked tirelessly to bring this national convention together. I specifically like to say at government level, the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, who is here with us today, led this process in the interministerial committee that I gave him the responsibility to lead. And he, from a government point of view, led this process from the back, allowing the process to evolve independently without too much government interference. To the extent that government got involved, if you like, it was light touch. Kancane nje, lapho nalapho. It was never led by the government. It was just mbijana, lapho nalapho kuphela. That's how it worked. Because we held the belief that this must be citizen-led. And today we are pleased that we are going to elect or choose a steering committee which will be a citizen-composed steering committee. And to the extent that, yes, we will be involved, it will just be to give it that little bit of support, logistical support, financial support. And let me talk about the finances, because there was this concern that this dialogue is going to cost 740 million rand. As soon as I saw the number, I said, I shall not allow the taxpayers' money that amounts to 740 million rand to be utilized. We can have this dialogue much cheaper, much lower costs must be the order of the day. That is what we did. And you know what? We were very fortunate. The University of South Africa, the Vice Chancellor, the good professor, immediately said, you know what, to cut off all those costs, we'll give you this beautiful venue for free. And now we got it for free. Now, that is exactly what we are going to seek to do. We will be going around the country. We will desist from hiring halls, expensive halls in hotels, and so on. We will want to hold the various dialogues in schools. We will hold it in churches, not in beer halls, no. And we will hold them under the tree and all that. So that is how we are going to bring the cost down, because the people of South Africa do not want us to be spending too much money on the conversations that we are going to have. So we are extremely grateful to the Vice Chancellor and the leadership and staff of the UNISA for hosting this national convention and providing the facilities and the services that they've made possible. I wish to thank the members of the Eminent Persons Group, all of whom graciously and enthusiastically accepted my invitation to serve as the champions and guarantors of the national dialogue. These esteemed South Africans are Dr. Brigelia Bam, former Independent Electoral Commission chairperson, who accepted this role. Mr. Robbie Brozen, entrepreneur and business person. Judge Edwin Cameroon. I think we'll applaud them all together when I finish. Otherwise, you're going to be very tired. Judge Edwin Cameroon, former Constitutional Court judge. Mr. Mani Dipicho, former Northern Cape Premier. Dr. Desiree Ellis, Banyana coach and football legend. I knew you wanted to applaud her. Ms. Ella Gandhi, peace activist and stalwart. Ms. Nomboniso Gasa, researcher and rural activist. Mr. Bobby Gotzel, a business leader, particularly in the mining industry. Dr. John Kani, award-winning actor. I knew you would applaud that. But he's not going to act on stage today. Mr. Siya Kolisi, Springbok captain and world champion. Miss Mia Leroux, Miss South Africa 2024. His Grace, Bishop Barnabas Lekhanyane, leader of the Zion Christian Church. And His Grace Bishop Enganas Lekhanyane, leader of the St. Enganas Zion Christian Church. The Most Reverend Thabo Makgoba. How can the Most Reverend, I missed something because Leana ke Bishop, ke Archbishop. The Most Reverend Archbishop Thabo Makgoba, yes, Anglican Archbishop of Cape Town. Professor Tinyiko Maluleke, who is the chairperson of the National Planning Commission. Dr. Barbara Masekela, Os Barbara, poet, educator, and stalwart. Ms. Lindiwe Mazibuko, former member of parliament. When she was in parliament, she used to give me a lot of trouble. Mr. Rolf Meyer, former minister and constitutional negotiator and a good friend. Ms. Glenwan Hlope, storyteller, writer and actor. Ms. Nompendulo Mkaachwa, former member of parliament and fees must fall activist. Ms. Khotatso Monjane, Grand Slam tennis champion. Professor Harry Rangwedzi Nengwekulu, former activist and educationist. Mr. Begin Chalinchali, unionist and former COSATU General Secretary. Hosi Filia Nwamitwa, traditional leader, Hosi Amin. Hosi Thabo Siatlulo, chairperson of the National House of Traditional and Khoisan Leaders. Dr. Gloria Sirobe, business leader. Bishop Sitembile Sipuka, president of the South African Council of Churches. Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman, founder of the Gift of the Givers. Professor Derek Schwartz, academic. Ms. Lurato Trok, author and early literacy expert. Mr. Sibusiso Vilani, mountaineer and adventurer, those who go on to the mountains. Mr. Siabulela Kuza, award-winning scientist and entrepreneur, the only South African who has a planet named after him. Now, I took the trouble to read all their names because they are the eminent persons group that I appointed on advice from a number of people, including from the PTT. These are the men and women who are going to be the champions, the guarantors, the wise minds that are going to steer this whole process forward, working together with our steering committee, working together with, yes, a management team that will be put in place, working together with the administrators and the secretariat who are NEDLEC. Now, since their appointment, the EPG, they have provided valuable guidance and support to me and to all those involved in this work. Lastly, I wish to thank all the delegates to this convention and everyone who is following these proceedings around the country. I do thank the EPG because when there was doubt on whether we should proceed with this convention today, they met and gave me counsel and gave everyone counsel who was involved and said to me, President, much as people might think that we are not entirely ready, the invitations have already gone out. Many people have already been invited. If we are to postpone this important national event, it will dampen the occasion, people will be more doubtful, trust will be lost, and they said we best continue with this dialogue. And as with all other events, there will always be gaps, there will always be shortcomings, but it is always best to press ahead and to get as much work that needs to be done. And I'm truly pleased that they gave that advice, because those who have been doing the work, the organizing committee, has pulled out all stops to make this day possible. And I'd like us to give them a round of applause. Now, all of you who are here, you have taken upon your shoulders a historic task. You have taken upon your shoulders the responsibility to launch a conversation among South Africans that will reach every corner of our country, that will determine the future of our nation. Let this national convention be a call to every South African to participate, to be heard, and to be counted. This convention should not be remembered for the fine speeches alone, but the process it begins towards a new roadmap, a framework for political stability, economic renewal, social cohesion, national unity, and how we can continue to build a capable and ethical state. We must aim to emerge from this process with a shared national vision, one that is bold enough to inspire, yet practical enough to be implemented. So let us speak with courage, without any fear. Let us listen with humility, and let us negotiate amongst ourselves with goodwill. Let us be reminded that our disagreements on any issue are small compared to the magnitude of what we can achieve working together. In the words of the Freedom Charter, which says, "The people shall govern," that governance should start here, with a dialogue that belongs to the nation. I declare the first National Convention of the National Dialogue of South Africa officially open.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and welcome to the National Convention here at UNISA in Pretoria. And joining me, I'd like to welcome General Bantu Holomisa, the Deputy Minister of Defense and Military Veterans and also the leader of the United Democratic Movement. General, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
General, the national dialogue, I know there have been a number of legacy foundations, number of political parties that have pulled out. I've seen your statement. You are saying this is an important conversation. How important is it?
This is an important conversation because we have to look and evaluate the road we've traveled since 1994. And there have been a lot of ups and downs, including potholes on this journey. And we may have to find some solutions to deal with those problems. But the beauty about this today, we are not getting into substantive arguments, but we are looking at the structure and what kind of terms of reference and what time frames and where the budget will come from. This is not a national convention for 2 days. This might take almost a year or so because there are a lot of issues which we need to address. And some of the issues we will be addressing, if there is a consensus on them, which may necessitate amendment of the legislation or constitution for that matter, that would be sent to, those resolutions would be sent to Parliament for ratification.
General, I see an old friend of yours, Mr. Rolf Meyer, is also part of these discussions. Bringing a man like him, what are you expecting him to bring, given, of course, he has been not only in dialogues, but in the field itself for many decades?
Well, it's good that you bring people who have an institutional memory. Remember that Cyril Ramaphosa and Rolf Meyer were the architects of the current constitution. And for them to give us another chance to review what they have done, today they will be hearing from the public to say close so and so, which you recommended. We differ with you. It's not moving. It's not improving the quality of life of the people. So it's good.
General, one final question: how do we go from dialogue to action?
From dialogue to action will depend on the terms of reference we are going to agree upon here. In other words, how do we deal with a resolution? What will be the role of the government? What will be the role of Parliament? What will be the role of civil society?
General, absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are still here at the National Convention at UNISA, and joining me, I'd like to welcome Maulana Muhammad Uthman from the Sunni Ulama Council. Maulana, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you, friends?
Alhamdulillah, and yourself, can't complain, Maulana. Maulana, ulama being involved at this convention, how important is it?
I think that ulama, they are playing a pivotal role in this country. As alhamdulillah, there is a large number of Muslims, those are staying in this country. And all the ulama council, and especially Sunni ulama council, alhamdulillah, always representing Muslims in this country, standing for their rights. Either it is marriage or women rights, or like I can say that every right what Muslims they need, alhamdulillah, that ulama are the one, those are representing the Muslims community in this.
And that's the important part, because we've got such a big Muslim population here. These discussions, it's only in the interest of our communities, because if we're not going to talk about it, then nothing's going to happen.
Yes, true, because you see that we have to organize. And alhamdulillah, I will say here, Islam is such the one who that take care, look after, and speak about all the community. And especially Islam speak about justice and welfare. So that's the biggest thing. And alhamdulillah, ulama are leading that.
How much of a role has the Muslim community played within South Africa's, not only the creation of the constitution, but also for the last 31 years, helping with social welfare in so many aspects?
I think that if we go to the stats, that the most charity in this country, if we see the average or ratio, is done by Muslims. In either it is in politics also, alhamdulillah, Muslims, they are playing a major role. And especially in welfare, we can say that on a large scale, that Muslims, they are helping people. If you see, even in a small towns, that our Muslims sometimes organized and sometimes individually, they are that educating people. They are opening the business for people to that they can sustain themselves.
Molana, one final question. For us to have action, because some of the times there's not a lot of action, we only talk and that's about it. What are you hoping that whatever comes out of here will be action for us?
Okay, I will say that actually, as I mentioned, that individually Muslims, they are doing a lot in this country. But if Muslims, they are really organized and they can play their role on a large scale, inshallah, on a bigger level. And inshallah, that from this national convention and dialogue, I hope that there will be some change in this country, in this community, to all the citizens of this country.
Molana, Jazakallah so much for joining us. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, barakumullah.
We're still here at the National Convention at UNISA. And joining me, I'd like to welcome Matthew Parks, who is the Parliamentary Coordinator for COSATU. Matthew, absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having us.
Matthew, trade union involvement in these discussions, how important is that?
Look, it's critical. These issues affect workers. We have a 42% unemployment rate. We've got entrenched levels of poverty, of inequality, of crime and corruption. When public services struggle to deliver, working class communities struggle. When the economy doesn't grow, we can't save or create jobs. And so these have a huge impact upon workers. And again, if we want to resolve them, we need to have the inclusion of workers, of trade unions, but also of colleagues from business too. We need to also have government participating as well, because all of these solutions require all of us to contribute. The challenges are very complex, and they need all of us to be part of this discussion to see how to resolve it. So I think for us it's about not just having discussions, but also critically, when you leave, do you have a plan to implement them? And do you hold each other accountable?
Matthew, I want to touch on unemployment. The stats came out this week, right? There's no magic wand to fix this. But here's a chance for there to be an addressing of those problems. From COSATU's perspective, and I know obviously you are part of that tripartite alliance, what would you recommend from a COSATU perspective to say we need to bring this unemployment rate down in the next 5 to 10 years?
Look, it's about dealing with the basics, making sure we have affordable electricity. That's key to mining, to manufacturing. Making sure transport is working fully, because again, that's key to thousands of jobs in the mining, manufacturing, agricultural sectors. Making sure metro rail is working, because that's key to getting workers on time in our cities to the workplace. And those are difficult, but those are relatively easier parts. Fixing local government, because when you don't provide municipal services, it's very difficult for companies to operate in our rural areas, in our towns, in our cities. But also, as you fix the state, even issues like home affairs, policing and so forth, you've also got to stimulate economic growth, which means investing in infrastructure, which means giving more financial support to SMEs, to industrial sectors, not just from the state, but also from the private sector too. The banks have also got to play their role. And once you do those issues, you've got to provide a path to employment. So expanding public employment programs, but also for the private sector too, to offer internship, artisanship opportunities as well. Also fixing our skills, our education systems too, to make sure workers have the skills that society requires, or the economy requires rather. So for us, it's about short, medium and long-term interventions.
You speak about, Matthew, the private sector. Right? Private sector is out there to make a profit. This is just how it is. That's the way capitalism works. How much of a role do they now need to play, not only from contributing from a social perspective, but also to say, well, the inequality that we're seeing in this country needs to be addressed. Is COSATU confident that the private sector would come to the party, given who they are and what they do represent?
They need to come to the party, because the state will never have enough money to resolve all of our issues. The state can provide a framework, it can provide services, infrastructure, logistics, but the private sector needs to come to the party. We need the banks, the investment funds, the pension funds to invest more in South African businesses, in agriculture, in infrastructure, in industrial sectors, because the state can't do everything. They've got to invest more here as opposed to investing offshore. The private sector needs to see South Africa doing well, because they're not going to make a profit if South Africa continues to fragment, to deteriorate, etc. The private sector must make profit, no doubt about it. But it must also pay workers a living wage. If you pay workers peanuts, then they won't be able to buy the goods this very same companies produce. If we live in deep levels of poverty, then how are we going to grow the economy? So we need the private sector to do well. but they also need workers to do well, and we need government also to do well. We're in this boat together, and we all need to collaborate together.
Matthew, we've seen talk, we've seen dialogues, we see many politicians speak. Rarely do we see action. How do we now see action occurring? Because the citizen, the layman on the street is going to say, these things don't really matter to us. If we're not seeing tangible solutions on the ground, we don't see tangible actions happening. How do we have that?
So I think to be fair to all of us, there has been some progress. We don't always see it in the daily headlines.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah.
We've overcome load shedding, but electricity is still far too expensive. Transnet has doubled its performance since last year, but we need to get it to where it was in '94. Metro Rail is reopening lines, but only about 10% of its former customers are back on in the train. So there's progress, but more must be done. But I think that's the key thing is we can talk, and we all know what needs to be done. We really need to see action. So we've seen progress in the South African Revenue Service. Can we replicate that kind of work across police, home affairs, education, health, etc.? But we've got to get the basics right. We've got to deal with the issue of corruption. We've got to make sure we collect the taxes owed to the state to fund public services. So for us, these are not complex issues, they're difficult issues. But you've got to really see action. And people who don't deliver, be it a minister or a mayor or a CEO of a bank, they've got to be held accountable too.
Indulge me for a few minutes, Matthew, because you brought up policing. This Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. The police right now, there is that sense or a lack of trust that is there. Events like this over here, events like what we're seeing now with the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, again, action has to be taken. Whether or not we see that is going to be that difficult question, but surely that's something that we have to see occurring.
No, so the Commission of Inquiry is necessary. There was no other choice. You couldn't afford this cloud to hang over the police, the judiciary, correctional services. Society needs to have faith and trust in the police and the law enforcement. And our ordinary members of the police don't get paid much. They risk their lives. On average, every week, one police officer is killed in the line of duty. So they also need to have the air cleaned. We're glad that's going to be done by a retiring Deputy Chief Justice to give the credibility it needs. There's a short time frame. And again, we need to see action as a result. And the rebuilding of SARS has shown you can do it. If you remove corrupt elements, you appoint competent leadership, you invest in the infrastructure capacity, you fill critical vacancies, those are the same things which the police needs as well. And same with the judiciary, same with correctional services too. So for us, it's a right step in the right direction.
It's always a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
We are still here at the National Convention at UNISA, and for my following guest, it's a home event for him. It's none other than Prof. Dirk Kotze, who is, of course, a lecturer and professor here at the University of South Africa. Professor, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Professor, national dialogues. We've been having all of this for quite some time, but of course, it's now being formalized at a higher level. I want to get your take on legacy foundations pulling out, a right or wrong move.
Well, the reasons they are giving for it is not to pull out of the national dialogue, but to pull out of the event of now. And to some extent I can understand that. They believe that there was not enough preparations done before the time, and we can see it to some extent today. At the same time, I think they said it should be more of a citizen-driven process and less of a government-driven process or a politically driven process. And I think there were some reservations by some of them that it can become almost hijacked for the purposes of next year's election. It's difficult to say whether they are correct or not, because we will still have to see how this day to 2 days are going to unfold. But I think what we are seeing so far is that the government is not very visible here. The ANC is not very visible here. The political parties are not very visible here. And it looks like it's quite a widespread of civil society organizations that are here, and quite diverse. So I think the early signs look good. And I think it is, but the real test is going to be what will be the outcome of this. After today's event, and today is going to be a key day, because it deals with, there's going to be a session that deals with breakaway groups, and that's really where the focus will be where these different delegates will be able to participate in it. And I think that will determine whether this is something which is simply a repetition of the issues that we are very familiar with, like whether it's civil society, whether it's economic issues or social issues or crime or so, or whether it's going beyond that. And I think the purpose of such a dialogue is rather to go beyond the issues that are so well known to all of us.
Prof, hijacking of the convention or the dialogue, and when I say hijacking, a lot of the concern has been this is going to be government and government-led, whereas they've sold it as potentially a citizen-led dialogue. Surely now government has to say, maybe we need to take a step back and allow for citizen conversation. For 31 years, it hasn't been that case. Are we about to say this is an exception to the norm?
So far, it looks like it. It looks like government is standing back a little bit. They are not very prominent in the program of today, except for President Ramaphosa's opening speech. And if they do stand back and they don't dominate the discussions later on also, then I think it is a good beginning. It's a good way of. But the big danger is the fact that they want to now spread it to the wards. And I don't think that's a good concept, because that automatically politicizes it also, because that's where the parties are involved. So I think they must revisit that. I had a discussion this morning already with Mr. Rolf Meyer of looking at alternatives specifically for that. So I think that is one of the key issues about what will happen after this and how it will go on to the different communities, to the different places in South Africa, which is not necessarily controlled from here.
Prof, I think one of the concerns a lot of citizens are having, and of course, the Constitution dictates that anything that's going to change the country is going to be led legislatively. Our Constitution obviously has that in order for it to occur. Can there be some sort of amendment to that where citizens have a change, citizens lead the discussion, citizens take charge of the discussion, and ultimately they have the power to make those changes? Can we see that happening? Because at the end of the day, they are the voter and they are the ones that's interest needs to be taken at heart.
Well, to be honest, there's actually many opportunities for citizen participation in the current system. The Constitution is not an obstacle for that. It is actually an enabling instrument for that. Think about, I mentioned just now the wards. In each ward there's supposed to be a ward committee consisting of 10 elected members. How many of our citizens are actually, first of all, know about it, secondly, are participating in it, and therefore not use the opportunities that are there? Public participation when new legislation is in the pipeline, whether it's at national level, whether at local level. How many participate in that? How many participate when the integrated development plan every year comes to us as citizens? To say, give your input about how local government must govern. So I think that's where we start. Next year's election, how many of us are going to vote? Especially the young ones.
Well, last year we saw quite a low voter turnout.
Yes, and when it comes to local government elections, it's even less historically. So this event here is actually saying to us as citizens also, wake up, take your opportunities and exploit them.
Prof, absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure, thank you.
We need to go back to the process. The fact that a president of a country can ask citizens to get involved and get the whole country involved in finding a way forward, that's humility. The government is saying, we need your help to help fix the country. That's a great thing. I don't think of any government in the world that will be able to do a thing like that. Secondly, the citizens need to understand that we can't be totally expected on government to fix things. To be fair to government, and I'm not defending them, only 7.4 million people pay taxes in this country. The taxes of 7.4 million people can't look after 65 million people in this country. The citizens can play a role where they can fix things themselves. We need everybody in this country to be a patriot. When you're a patriot, you understand that this country doesn't belong to the government. It belongs to you. you do everything to fix it. So whilst we're asking you to bring your problems, we're also asking you to bring solutions to those problems. And at the same time, to me, the second part of this whole dialogue is to tackle government and say we want to hold you accountable. Why is money returned to the treasury? Why is the money not spent correctly? Why are people deprived when the money is made available? Why do decisions take so long? Why is the bureaucracy and red tape? When people approach the municipality, why are they turned away and they're not listened and not heard? We need you to replace such kind of people. We need more efficient people in the civil service. The civil service is too bloated. We need to reduce it and bring more efficient people. We have too many ministries. Why do we need so many ministries? Many of them are inefficient. Rather use that money for health, for education, for water, for corruption, and those kind of items. Where there's a mess up in the system, let us find the solutions and you fix it inside you. To me, then this is a good dialogue. Where you hold government accountable, you ask people for the problems, and collectively you work together. It will remain a talk show if we don't make a difference. I'm very positive that we are going to make a difference. We have a very select group of people who are very keen on making a difference. And the fact that so many people have turned up, yes, there is some disturbance, some people have pulled out of the process, that's their loss. And of course, if the public participates and come forward, we need to show 1% progress. Once we show 1% progress, trust starts building. More people get involved, we show 5% progress. And as long as government sticks to they want to make a difference, and then they listen to what we say to tell them, the public gets involved, the government gets involved, they change their system, the public helps, and people start seeing a difference, yes, then together we can fight crime, people can control crime in their own areas. Whistleblowers can come forward. And on that point, we tell government, show greater respect to whistleblowers, because now they're treated like the criminals. And if we have show greater respect, protect them, listen to them, more people will come forward. Then, of course, we're going to support and strengthen the SIU, the Hawks, the NPA, and they need to act without fear and without favor to catch no matter who it is, whether they're the relatives of government, whether they're the ministers themselves, whether they're the high-level people in the civil service. We need them to act decisively and efficiently. When people start seeing that, there'll be lots of interest in the country for people to do the right thing. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Your word
Yeah.
to South Africans in general.
I've mentioned this already, that the country does not belong to the government. It belongs to us 65 million people. When it belongs to us, we as patriots do everything possible to fix it ourselves. Retired doctors, retired teachers, retired nurses, retired farmers, retired engineers, we need you. We need you to come forward to build this country together, to transfer skills, to help, and there also, government has to open the door to allow people to come in and to be allowed freely and willingly to come and help the system to make it better. Because those people who have retired, we're talking of hundreds of thousands of years of experience between them. Among all the people in the country, there's lots of, well, not thousands of thousands of years, but hundreds of thousands of hours of experience which we can use in the interest of rebuilding a greater country.
This is the conclusion of the Hilaal broadcast at the National Convention here at UNISA. President Cyril Ramaphosa has delivered his speech. Now it is time for the action to occur. These dialogues are going to be taking place, as the President had mentioned, with 10 million South Africans. The question we have to ask ourselves is, after these discussions, can we see tangible actions happening on the ground so that South Africans and the country as a whole can have a country worth living in? From myself, Faraz Patel, here at UNISA, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.